way. Fantastic. So yeah, really looking forward to this next session. And I think, Bill, you're up first. So thank you. Please give a round of applause.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Laboon. I'm with Web3 Foundation, which I know it's kind of strange, but we are the people behind Polkadot, even though our name is a little bit different from Polkadot. So I want to discuss today DAOs and governance. So governance in Polkadot has a very specific meaning, and what we mean when we say governance is determining what is going to happen next, which also means determining actually the rules, not just of our system, of our DAO that is actually running the entire Polkadot chain, but also the rules of the chain itself. So it turns out, our governance on Polkadot has a lot of power, right? We actually can change, the entire code of the chain and agree to change this code, right? So we could do something like vote in a dictatorship for our governance, right? Essentially, put some super user in charge of our chain, which, as you can imagine, would not be great for decentralization. So we have a very sophisticated governance system that controls not just the DAO that is running our system, but also the system itself. So our governance system is, in fact, a DAO, which can control the logic of the chain. So if we look at our blockchain here, we, as the people that are holding DOT, the people that are users of the Polkadot network, can decide what we want the rules of the system to be. So this leads to a very interesting, so for the people coming in wondering what this strange image is, this leads to a very interesting set of circumstances where the DAO is, in fact, voting on how the DAO works, right? So, just step aside, yeah, that's okay. I want to come up with some analogy here for DAOs and people walking by, but I just can't do it off the top of my head, apologies. So as we were doing this, we actually spent quite a bit of time with researchers to determine how we should put the governance of our DAO and indirectly, right, the chain, the governance of the chain itself and the rules for how the chain works together. So we first came up with some particular goals, right? So what do we want? Well, obviously we want to be able to make good decisions. So what this means is that we have fair representation and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the ability to make decisions and good decisions even if not everybody is participating, right? Because this actually is quite a problem with on-chain governance, is low participation rates. Security. We obviously wanted to avoid loopholes, right, in the system and behaviors that would be suboptimal, right? Because of these, if not just coding problems, but also just game theoretical problems and things like that. We want it to be coherent. We want to make sure that the community can stay united. We want to avoid forks by making sure that everybody is listened to and that they can participate and decide what the future of the chain is. We want it to scale. Right? We want to make sure that we can allow different proposals and lots of different people to vote on these proposals. And finally, of course, because we're a blockchain, because we, hopefully all of us agree with this philosophy, we want it to be decentralized. We did not want any party to be privileged ahead of time. We didn't want to have some members whose votes were worth more than others. We didn't want to have certain people who could or accounts that could put vetoes on things. So here were our goals for governance for, again, our DAO that is, in fact, controlling the chain. So we came up actually with a rather intricate system, but ultimate power always rests in the hands of the dot holders, right? So we actually have a hierarchical system. So Polkadot is what we call a heterogeneously sharded system. There are lots of different chains that actually are controlled by one, what we call relay chain. This is similar to the beacon chain in Ethereum, like one chain that coordinates them. And all of these individual what we call parachains, these shards, can have their own forms of governance. So it's very decentralized. Switzerland is a great place for us. It's very similar, right, with the cantons and then a federal power. The cantons, in our analogy, the shards, the parachains, they can have their own governance systems. They can have their own unique governance systems, but they are only local to that chain. Our parachain, like the federal version of our governance, has this particular configuration. But as I said, we can have different shards that have their own local control. So anyone, if you have one dot, right, you can make a proposal. You can try to change the direction of the chain. And in fact, these proposals are automatically executed if they pass governance. It's okay if you want to go past here. Yeah. Lots of other people already have, so. Yeah, no worries. But only proposals with enough support from others. You can essentially second or endorse them. So other dot holders can see your proposal on chain. We have a user interface for this. I actually tweet out all the time about what's happening on chain. And if you get enough people behind your proposal, then you can have it voted on by all of the dot holders. We also have a council. And the council can also produce its own proposals. But again, these have to go and be endorsed by all of the dot holders. The dot holders are the only ones who can actually pass something. The council is, elected by the dot holders, right? So they are representatives, but the only power they have is another way to introduce these proposals. Okay? And these proposals that come from the council are slightly different. They're slightly easier to pass than public proposals, but we always have the fact that the network is controlled by the majority of the stake. So if 50% plus one of dot holders disagree with something the council does, it does not happen, right? Same with a public proposal. Right? So as I said, this is a very powerful DAO, essentially, right? This is not trying to do something very specific. It's running the governance, of the entire Polkadot chain and all of its parachains, its shards. And we've been doing this on Polkadot since August of 2020, so that's almost 2 years now. We have what we call a canary network, Kusama, which is not a test network, but an actual operating network that acts much like Polkadot, using the same code. And that's been running for a year before that. So as you can imagine, we have learned some things, right? So not only have we done research on this beforehand, but we have seen how this works, what are the pitfalls, what are the problems, and so I just want to discuss a few of those. So the first is a bias towards inaction is very important if your DAO is going to do something that can be very dangerous. Right? And so it tends to be very difficult to actually get something to happen on Polkadot. And this is really a good thing, right? Because if you don't allow this, if you have the ability to do something dangerous and do it quickly and have only a small percentage of the network behind it, it can be really dangerous. Right? So we're very lower C conservative with the network. Now that said, it doesn't mean that nothing happens. We have upgraded the code, like our network's code, the blockchain's code itself, over 23 times Over 23, I should just say 24. Right. 24 times, okay? So things happen, but it is generally, I guess I shouldn't be a marketer, right? It don't sound very convincing. So 24 times we have upgraded this. So things happen, but generally it is with the support of a large percentage of those who vote. Which brings me to our second big lesson that we have learned is that it is very important to represent passive participants. So, even in your like nation-state voting, like you're getting, let's say 60, 70% of eligible voters to vote is very good. On Polkadot, we actually consider getting 1% pretty good. Right? Because, and I understand it, right? I'm a busy guy. You're all busy people. You don't always want to look and say, oh, yes, I'm looking at this hexadecimal code, and that's I don't want to upgrade that, right? You don't want to spend the time for it. So it's very important, though, that they have some voice, like these passive participants, that they don't want to spend every day, they're not engineers, they don't want to look at every decision and parameter change. So we have a council. We have people that are elected that can act on behalf of the DOT holders. And this has been very important. The council can't do much, again, but what they can do is propose things that are easier to pass under low turnout situations. So when the council issues a proposal, you need basically a lower majority in order to pass it than if it's from some person in the public. But voting for someone on the council, that doesn't take a lot of time, and once you do it, that person is in the council. You basically continuously vote for that person. You do one transaction, and then you're done. And hopefully, you pick somebody good to represent you. And it turns out, again, this is very important, right? Because if passive participants are 99% of your DAO, of your system, and you don't have any representation for them, how are you? How representative are you really? And thus, how decentralized are you really? And information sharing is really crucial. Because I just joked around about looking at hexadecimal representations of the bytecode that the chain is going to run. It is important to have education and teach people what does this mean, right? A lot of proposals, and not just on Polkadot, but other things I see are very hard to understand. What does it mean? So education, trying to teach people what does it mean if you vote yes on this or you vote against it? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for the chain? What does that mean for the world? If we really want to get deep and philosophical about this, because translating from something on chain to actual use cases and understanding of people, that's a big jump, right? Even often for technical people, but for everyone, really. And so we've really made it a goal. It is a goal of mine to teach people to understand about Polkadot, to understand what they're voting on, to explain these votes. And finally, even though there is a bias towards inaction, you really need to ensure that governance can evolve, right? So if we had seen that there were constantly 95% participation in Polkadot votes, which would be great, I would love if we saw that happen, then we probably would have changed some of the mechanisms about how about the council. If we had seen that there were a lot of spammy proposals, right? We'd want to change that. We already are in the process of evolving how our DAO makes decisions and trying to reduce the need for the council for a lot of these things, because we have seen that this is the way towards decentralization. We want to try to reduce these roles. But it's a slow process. And so even though it should evolve, the network should evolve, the DAO should evolve, our decisions should evolve, we really need to make sure that we do this in a way that that is slow, steady, well tested before moving on. So unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. I can see that the timer ticking down to 0 in front of me. But please, if you see me around and you have questions about Polkadot, about governance, about DAOs, please come up and say hi and ask. Or there are a few ways to get in touch with me here. All right, thank you very much. This is great.